Local artist Jason Tennant connects with nature in a way that's almost spiritual. He spends his free time at his remote cabin in the woods. He forages not just for the elusive morel or chantrel, but for American chestnut, most of which was cut down nearly 100 years ago. His respect for this wood is clear. One look at his Nike of the Forest series will show you that. Take a look.
American chestnut is a native species to the northeast woodlands. It was infected with blight, which is a fungus that would girdle the tree. That was through trade that fungus came into our country. The forests were full of these things they'd call gray ghosts, and those were American chestnut trees that basically had died. I've been foraging these chestnut remnants for probably about 15 years. The Nike of the Forest series is what I'm really searching for when I'm foraging. Nike of the Forest is a series of one-of-a-kind pieces that I am grafting wings onto old remnants of American chestnut. The Nike of the Forest, I would say, started out with representing those ephemeral moments when you're out in the woods and something happens, like you see an owl, and it's just amazing moment. And the texture of the wood of the American chestnut, that sinewy texture, and the wing set is just kind of a composite of an experience like that. That's how I started out with the Nike of the Forest. This series is kind of allegorical. The name Nike comes from the Greek statue Nike of Samothrace. It's just a very gestural piece without arms in it. And since I'm putting wings on these, that's what kind of was the seed for that title. The wings are a different type of species of conifer where I can push and pull pigment to expose wood grain, and the wood grain actually mimics plumage patterns. Nature kind of is the grounding setting. So I'm working with these elements and I try to see how I can fit them together. Instead of doing a sketch, I'm just kind of looking at what might fit. Other things that I do are very designed and refined. So it's actually kind of two types of sculptural processes that I do. I'm an experimenter and I'm not a purist woodworker. I'm a sculptor. To achieve the visual image of what I'm moving for, I'm willing to go in all different directions, and some are very non-traditional. My interpretation of Nike of the Forest in relationship to these pieces in nature is it's a work of hope, and then I kind of bounce around with allegory or just pure letting nature express itself as minimally as possible with some of the pieces. As a person that's getting older, you tend to start to realize what's important to you. It's just to have balance, and that's what I choose to do with my time. Be out in nature.
And you can find out more by visiting jasontennant.com.